Friends and viewer, good day. Today let us discuss about the short story of a famous Nikolai Gogol, a Russian short writer. The name of this short story is The Overcoat by Nikolai Gogol. It is a very famous short story written by Nikolai Gogol. The story of this short story begins like the writer is telling us about the description and the man who works in the department of civil services in St. Petersburg. This man's name is Akakai Akakovich. He fulfills the role of tutelar counselor at the unnamed department, meaning he is a clerk who performs manual tasks. At his birth, his mother was given many choices of name to give the child, none of which she liked. She named the boy after his father, who was called Akaki, which created his humorous name Akaki Akakovich. Akaki Akakovich carefully copies official document at his office. He is treated with little respect by his fellow employees. The young official even goes so far to tease Akakovich and drops a bit of thresh on his head. They insinuate that he is beaten by the landlady and also that he may marry her. He tolerates these jokes until his actual work is interrupted, at which he pleads to be left alone to do his work. He cries off, "Leave me alone," affected one young official very deeply. Akakovich lives for his work and enjoys copying documents all day long, even into the night at his home. For all his enthusiasm, he doesn't make much money at his job. He's so obsessed with work that he does not notice things happening on the street around him. He ends up covered in the trash being thrown out of windows above the street. The other officials at his jobs are far more focused on how they look, how everyone else look. Akakovich has shabby appearances. He eats alone at home and hardly tastes his food before swallowing it. He goes right to bed instead of seeing or friends and drinking tea like the rest of the residents of St. Petersburg. A problem arises for Akakovich when winter arrives. His overcoat is far too thin and shabby to protect him from the cold gust of wind and snow. He takes his worn-out overcoat upstairs to a tailor, Petrovich, who lives in his building. Petrovich has only one eye and is often drunk, but he's a good tailor and has mended the garment for Akakovich many times before. This time, however, Petrovich refused to patch up the overcoat. He claims there is no fabric left to attach the patches to that. Akakovich must purchase a new overcoat, which comes as disastrous news to the impoverished Akakovich. Akakovich tries to meet with the tailor again when he might be in a better mood, but Petrovich still refuses to mend the old coat. The new coat will cost far more than Akakovich has stashed away, so he embarks on months of saving every last scrap of money he can. He walks more carefully in his boots so that they won't need mending. He spends as much time as he can in his night shirt to prevent his clothes from wearing out. He eats less. He has no tea in the evening and burns no candle. Akakovich gets used to this frugal lifestyle and even begins to relish his spendthrift behavior. Finally, with a bonus from work and his new saving, he can afford the new coat. He and Petrovich carefully buy the best fabric he can afford. When the new overcoat is finished, it is a fine garment and Akakovich is overjoyed. When he wears the coat out to go to work, the tailor follows him in the street to admire his own handiwork. At the office, everyone noticed the new coat and congratulates Akakovich. One department sub-chief even offers to throw a party to a Christian the coat with an evening out. Akakovich does not want to go, but he cannot refuse. He relishes the new level of acceptance he receives, and he feels excited to wear the coat in the evening. Later that night, Akakovich journeys through the cold to better part of town where the sub-chief lives. He attends the party and even drinks 2 glasses of champagne, but he quickly tries out. He does not know how to act or to what to say and leaves early. He makes his way back through the wealthier part of town to his own poor neighborhood around midnight. At a dimly lit town square, disaster strikes. A gang of men viciously mug Akakovich and steal the overcoat. Akakovich accosts the watchman who did nothing while he was robbed. The watchman simply tells him to go to the police the next day to report the robbery. Akakovich lady says to call the police or else nothing will be done. When Akakovich finally gets to see the district chief, he is met with probing question. The district chief thinks he has been out late at some disorderly house. Nothing is done about the robbery, and Akakovich finds himself left alone. His new prized overcoat stunned, he returned to work on his shabby overcoat. His co-worker take little pity on him. Some ridicule him. Once more, one colleague advises him to visit a local prominent personage or a man of high ranking who may be able to use his position to help poor Akakovich to get his cloak back. Akakovich visits the prominent personage and is forced to wait while he's such low rank. When he finally sees the prominent personage, the man talks down to Akakovich and scolds him for not going through official channels. Akakovich tries to describe how he has already done this with nothing coming of it. The prominent personage refuses to listen to the argument. He dismisses Akakovich with harsh words. The next day, Akakovich comes down with a fever. The doctor visits and says that Akakovich will soon die and that landlady should order the cheap coffin now. Akakovich says wretched things in his sickness. He finally takes back to the prominent personage and the district chief, but does so from his lonely bed. He dies. After a few days, his office tries to figure out why Akakovich has not shown up for work, and they find out he's dead. Akakovich's replacement isn't nearly as skilled at his job, but nobody seems to notice or mind. Soon people begin to talk about dead men appearing on Kalinkin Bridge at night, demanding the location of stolen overcoat. When people do not give the dead man a good answer, he tries to rip off their cloaks. The police are tasked with catching this dead man at his attempted robberies, but when they grab him, they cannot get good hold of him. Meanwhile, the prominent personage feels remorse over his treatment of the late Akakovich, inquiring after the man he had talked down to. He learns that Akakovich has died from a fever. He wishes to distract himself from the guilt he feels, and so he attends a party full of people of his own rank. Then he drinks champagne and brings to feel cheerful. He feels so cheerful that he plans to visit a lady, not his wife, later on that night. While the prominent personage on his way in a coach, the ghostly Akakovich accosts him and rips his fancy cloak. The prominent personage returns home terrified. From that point on, he is less mean to anyone below his social rank. After this, even no one sees Akakovich again, since the cloak he took seems to fit around his shoulder nicely. One night, a policeman sees another a goose wearing a fancy cloak and told off in a haughty manner. He leaves the goose alone. He must be someone else, as he is taller and more impressive than a cock which ever looked on his life. So this is the story of the short story, The Overcoat by Nikolai Gogol. This is a very beautiful and interesting story and very funny also. So, who was the character involved in this play? Akaki Akakowicz, a low-ranking official, an unnamed department, and a story as protagonist. Akakowicz is a bald and usually appears filthy and shabby. He loves to copy his official document and seems to want nothing else in his life. He pays little attention to the world around him and has trouble speaking to others. He is thus often unable to finish his own sentences. His impoverished life has installed a new tendency to avoid other people. The prominent personage, a well-known, well-off citizen with whom Akakowicz pleads for help. The prominent figure is never directly named, but is described as having an air of superiority. He looks down on Akakowicz and anyone else beneath him in the social order. Conversely, his confidence is shaken by people of higher rank. So another personage of this story is Petrovich the tailor. A one-eyed tailor, Petrovich is a moody alcoholic but is helpful to Akakowicz. When Petrovich is drunk, he tends to change less money to his work. When he's sober, he tends to be irritable, and thus he charges far more to stitch up garment. Petrovich takes pride in his work despite his unpredictable mannerism. The sub-chief, an official from Akakowicz office who throws a party to celebrate Akakowicz's new cloak. This sub-chief is obligated to throw the party from his inferior due to his own fragile social standing. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is the story of The Overcoat by Nikolai Gogol. I hope you will find it very amusing, very interesting, and very funny also.